Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. I just want to apologise for the late notice that it's now a consultative meeting, which is why there are some of us in person and some of us online. And the reason for the last minute change was because one of our contributors and one of the open forum applicants couldn't join us in person, but only notified us late, and therefore we can't have a formal meeting if they're not physically in the room. So it has to be a consultative meeting. So once it became a consultative meeting, then some people decided to join us online. So that's where we're at. So I'll have to do my consultative meeting remarks. So here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's Councillor Katie Dye, and I will be chairing today's meeting. At this point, I would like to clarify that while the meeting is being webcast to enable public access, it is not being held as a public meeting in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972. As such, it is a remote consultative meeting of the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. The status was altered to consultative in order for all items on the agenda to be considered and to allow attendance remotely. This also means the committee will not be in a position to take any formal decisions, and any proposed actions that do require formal ratification will be referred to the next formal public meeting of the committee for approval. Can I remind members who are online to turn their microphone to mute when they are not speaking and use the hand raising function to indicate they would like to speak as we move through the agenda, and hopefully Rachel can see them, because at the moment I can't. So in terms of introductions, shall we go around the room first? And we'll start on my left. So we'll go round everybody here and then we'll pick up with people who are online. Is that okay? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Wainwright, Policy Officer in the Climate Energy and Green Spaces team.
Good afternoon, Councillor Eleanor Thompson from Guiseley and Broughton Wood.
Hi folks, it's Councillor Adrian McCluskey, Farnley and Wortley.
Good afternoon everyone, Councillor Jordan Bowden, Roundhay Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Peter Carlill, Calvin Farsley Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Mohammed Rafiq, Chapel Alton Ward, and I'm also the Exec Board Member for Climate, Energy, Environment and Green Spaces.
Good afternoon, Councillor Barry Anderson, Adlin Wharfdale Ward.
Good afternoon, Toby Russell, Clerk to the committee.
Good afternoon, Polly Cook, Chief Officer of Climate, Energy and Green Spaces.
Thank you, everybody. So, Rachel, can you see people on your screen? Do you want to show me, and then I can ask people? Okay, so first I've got Councillor Hanan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Hanan for Erdinia High Park.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington.
Good afternoon, Councillor Harrington, Wetherby Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Tudor.
Good afternoon, Councillor John Tudor, Killingbeck and Seacroft Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Shazad.
Good afternoon, Councillor Mohammed Shazad, Morton Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Carlisle.
Yeah, Councillor Ed Carlisle for Hunslet and Riverside.
Thank you, Councillor Downs.
Yeah, Councillor Rick Downs from Otley and Eden Ward, and apologies for lack of video. I'm glad about it being an online meeting because my car's broken down, so the signal strength isn't very good.
Oh dear, well, thank you for joining us. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, hi, Councillor Mike Foster for Ardsley and Robin Hood.
Thank you. And then have we got people who are joining us for items? Have we got Phil?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Phil Evans. I'm the Chief Officer for Transformation and Partnerships in Children and Families, and I'm representing Julie Lungworth, who can't be here today.
Thank you very much. And Stacey?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stacey White. I'm Head of Place and Consents in Mass Transit Team at the Combined Authority.
Brilliant, thank you. Is that everybody? Don't think I've missed anyone, have I, Rachel? Okay, super. Right, thank you. Thank you everybody and welcome, and thank you Rachel for help with that. So Toby, do you want to run through the formalities, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So agenda item number 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Item number 2, there is no exempt information on this agenda. Item number 3, there are no formal late items noted. Agenda item number 4, can I ask members to declare any interest they may have? Silence is a no. And finally, agenda item number 5, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Oliver Newton. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Toby. So in terms of minutes, we're asked to note the minutes from the last formal meeting, which was held on the 15th of December, and then to note the minutes of the consultative meeting, which was held on the 19th of February. So that's rather a lot of minutes. So I'm just going to go through them. And if you would like to make a comment or raise any matters arising, can you put your hand up if you're in the room? Rachel, can you let me know if anybody puts their hand up online, please? Thank you. Okay, so the first one's from December, page 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and then from the 19th of February, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Okay, thank you very much. So they are noted. Toby, did you want to add an amendment, please?
Sorry, yeah, Chair. That was just to the top of the 19th of February suite. It's just to note the addition of Councillor Bowden's attendance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so that moves us on to item 7, open forum. So Rachel, do you is it you or Toby or somebody's going to do the Bumblebee video?
I'll be doing that, Chair.
Okay. So should we move to that then,
Yeah,
please?
no worries. 1 second.
For the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, a charity dedicated to reversing the declines we've seen in bumblebee populations over the last century. Today I'm going to run through our manifesto for bumblebees and share my top 3 recommendations for how local authorities can contribute to helping pollinators. Pollination by insects, and in particular bees, is crucial for approximately 1/3 of what we eat. These are the foods that provide us with the most nutrition too, the fruits and vegetables that we rely on to keep us and our children healthy. It's not just about crops though, as insect pollination is vital to help around 90% of our wild plants to reproduce. Without this pollination, the natural world would be unrecognisable. In the UK, we have over 270 species of wild bees, 24 of which are bumblebees, and the rest are known as solitary bees. We also have the honeybee, which is native to the UK, but no longer wild. Honeybees are essentially livestock, and although they're important pollinators, they're not of conservation concern, like many of our wild bees are. Over the last 100 years, we've seen widespread declines in wild plants and pollinators. The story of bumblebees characterises the situation. Since the 1940s, 2 species have gone extinct, and several others have declined drastically in their range and populations. The major drivers associated with these declines include the wide-scale loss of flower-rich habitats, the increase in intensive farming methods, including pesticide use, increase in disease pressures, and the impacts of climate change. That's the bad news out of the way. The good news is there are things that we can all do to help. Last year we published our Bumblebee Manifesto to set out the key changes that will get bumblebees and other pollinators thriving again. Local government has a fundamental role in solving the climate and nature emergencies, and I'm delighted to be able to share some of the key actions that can be taken to help bumblebees and pollinators. On the screen, you will see 5 core recommendations. As this is just a short introduction, I'll pick out the top 3 areas local authorities can contribute. Firstly, prioritise pollinators, not pesticides. The use of pesticides in gardens, playing fields, parks and elsewhere across the unfarmed landscape is unsustainable, unwarranted and poses an unnecessary risk to bumblebees and other pollinators and people. Many towns and cities have already opted to go pesticide free and have shown that successful alternative weed control methods can be implemented. Number 2, put flower-rich habitats back on the map. To be able to thrive, bumblebees and pollinators depend on us creating bigger, better quality and more joined up flower-rich habitats. Governments should ensure pollinator-friendly action is embedded in all land use policies, from sustainable farming and land management schemes to planning initiatives such as biodiversity net gain. Empowering people and communities to create nature-friendly gardens and green spaces should also be a priority. And the other area I want to focus on is go further, faster to tackle climate change. The impacts of climate change are adding to the pressures that our pollinators already face. Governments need to ramp up action on climate change. Restoring flower-rich grasslands across the UK should be part of the plan. These habitats lock up carbon, mitigate against climate change impacts and allow bumblebees and other pollinators to thrive. I'll leave you with 3 key recommendations. Number 1, create pollinator habitats. Restore and create larger, interconnected, flower-rich habitats for our pollinators. Urban meadows, allotments, community green spaces and gardens can all benefit pollinators and people. Switching to bee-friendly trees, shrubs and bedding plants for amenity planting can make a big difference. Number 2, phase out pesticides. Commit to ending pesticide use across the council's land. Be bold and learn from other local authorities who have already successfully made the switch. And number 3, embed pollinator action in climate and nature policies. For example, urban tree planting can incorporate flowering tree species that benefit pollinators. But the most significant step would be to recognise the value of flower-rich grasslands to sequester carbon and support biodiversity by including them in your climate strategy. Thanks very much for your attention. Please feel free to contact me for further information or alternatively head to our website www.bumblebeeconservation.org.
Thank you for sharing that, Rachel. And Rachel has said that she will circulate those slides so that you can all look at them at your leisure as well. And thank you, Daryl, for presenting that to us, for taking the time to make the video. And I'm really glad that we managed to get you in. I don't know what members of the committee think, but I was wondering whether it's something that we should put on our agenda for one of the working groups for next year, for us to look at these recommendations. Are we in agreement with that? Okay, can we put that on as an agenda item, Rachel, for next year? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. And we have one more. We have Kate from Yorkshire Sustainability Week, who is joining us in person. Fabulous. Really good to see you. Thank you. Toby will sort that out.
Amazing. Fabulous. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I'm Kate Hutchinson. I am the founder of Yorkshire Sustainability Festival, as it is now. Hopefully, some of you will remember me from last year when we launched Yorkshire Sustainability Week. That ended up being the biggest sustainability business event in the north of England, and we attracted 1,200 people to attend 20 events in 15 locations across Yorkshire in our first year. We've now grown the week into a festival for 2 reasons. Logistically, it allows us to spread it over a fortnight instead of a week, which allows us to then deliver events in North, East, South and West Yorkshire. And I'm really pleased to tell you that our 2-day conference will be back in Leeds again this year, back at Clothall Court, and we've got some really exciting news. So what I thought I'd do today is just talk you through the format of the festival as it will look from a core events perspective, which is the side that we deliver, how we can hopefully get you involved, and just a bit of a run through on what the key topics are for us this year. So in the first week of the festival will take place from the 10th to the 21st of June. That is exactly 12 weeks from now. We're on the countdown now. And the first week we will deliver sustainability symposiums in Sheffield, Hull, Bradford and York. And they will be a series of roundtable discussions that will happen at the same time. And then we'll bring everybody together in that in the room to have a drinks evening with a keynote speaker. We like to bring international keynote speakers together. So you'll see the return of John Elkington and the likes at these kind of events. And we're treating those as if they are like the pre-discussions that you see at COP. We're building this to become like a regional COP. That's the direction of travel that we'd like to take it in, right? So the conversations will be around construction, energy, transport, skills, citizens, engagement, etc. Each topic, each city will have different topics based on what is happening in that region specifically and what that region would like to lean into. And then the following week, we will have our 2-day conference on the 18th and 19th of June. That will be held at Clothall Court, which is my favourite venue in the entire of Leeds. It's a fantastic venue if you've not been in it, massively underrated, brilliant place. And I'm really pleased to say that the council are back on board this year as what we're calling key regional partners. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. And we have had it confirmed that we do have the space outside of Clothall Court. Now that you pedestrianised Quebec Street, thank you, appreciate it. It's great. We're going to have a huge marquee down Quebec Street. We're going to have food vans all in front of Restaurant Bar and Grill and Banyan, and it's going to be a huge brand activation zone. So we're going to have things like we're expecting a company to come and build us a sand statue. We're going to have cars. We're going to have all sorts of different things happening out there, including a kitchen where we'll have Incredible Edible, who are going to be producing food from the region, bringing it. We're going to be cooking that food on the day, talking to people about how they can eat sustainably, and it's going to be a really exciting sort of brand activation. All of that will be open to the public. Once you go through the marquee, that is when it will be ticketed, and we will have day one of our conference is going to be focused on, let me get it right. So day one of our conference is circular economy this year. Last year it was living sustainably, as you might remember. We've changed the theme a little bit this year so that it lands a bit better. So circular economy, we're covering economy and finance. So we'll be leaning into donut economics, manufacturing, skills, tech, food, waste, and SME support. So they're each of our tracks. And as you hopefully remember from last year, under each of our tracks, we'll then have talks, workshops, panel discussions. One of the things that I am asking of the council is to provide us with speakers for our panel discussions. So if you feel that you could speak to any of those topics, particularly, we would love to hear from you. We'd love for you to be part of those panel discussions. Okay. So that's day one. We've secured Mary Portis to come and keynote at day one of the conference, which is a real coup for us. We're very excited about that. And we are also pushing for some other big names to close the day as well. I will report back on that when we have more information. But that's where we're at so far in the journey there. Day two of the conference is focused on future cities. So we'll cover construction, energy, transport, water, skills, and we've just added 2 more tracks to this, which is housing and people and place. And we're seeing people and place as the combination of all of these things. So the opportunity for us to talk about how people actually live in a sustainable city. And for that day, we've secured Kevin McLeod to speak from Grand Designs, which is very exciting. So we're really, really excited about that. After each conference day, we'll have networking out in the where the food stalls will be. So there'll be a huge opportunity for our business community to network with our other leaders as well. And then the following day, on the Thursday, the 20th of June, we'll have our secret business lunch back in a secret location. I can't tell you where it will be, in Leeds City Centre again. So we're aiming this year. Last year, like I say, we ended up with 1,200 attendees across 20 events in 15 locations. This year, we're aiming even higher. We're trying to engage 2,000 people to attend 50 events across as many locations as we possibly can. And like I say, we're building this to become a regional COP. That's the direction of travel that we'd like to take it in. So if there's any ways in which you can help us to do that, we'd be very grateful for your support, very grateful for your advice. With some things I can tell you, Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission are back on board as headline partners again this year, which is fantastic. We're really appreciative of their support, and we will be working with them on the papers, the insight papers they produced in 2023 to help to shape those roundtable discussions that are happening in week 1. And then those outcomes will be delivered in the conference in the following week. I think that's everything. But if anybody's got any questions, then please let me know.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking time to come and see us. It sounds very, very exciting. I'm sure we're all more than happy to support. It was an excellent event last year. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in a very short time. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so good to have 2 open forum submissions. So the next item is item 8 and working group update. So we have 1 working group to update, and Councillor Carlisle is going to update us on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the only one we've had this time, I think, which is the Economy and Finance Working Group. Just a single topic, this one. It was a further overview on progress on procurement and a discussion of where we'd like to see go further on that. So we're really talking about the social value model there. Headlines being that the council spends £1.3 billion a year through the procurement process. And how we, obviously the focus on that of value for money, but how we push for higher social outcomes from that spend as well. We looked at some of the government guidance, which gives a 10% minimum weighting for social value. And then we looked at the current council guidelines, which focus on three areas, the 3 E's, as they're called: employment and skills, environment and education. So we discussed really all of the opportunities we'd have through procurement to work with businesses on such things as reducing waste in their businesses through our contracts, reducing energy, developing green skills is a key one for the education side, tackling emissions, obviously, and then obviously all the emissions that come through that are both the councils, and we can talk to organisations about their scope 3 emissions. I think we were keen to go further on a number of items. There was a lot of talk about, for instance, ensuring that while we're using local businesses as well, making sure that any products that we're purchasing are local products. So rather than buying from a local business who then is shipping something from overseas, making sure that we're keeping an eye on how many miles each that our consumables are doing. But as well, there was a bit of a discussion about how we include procurement in these meetings, a question whether it should be a specific ask of the directors as they come to talk to us, to give updates to the board, so that we can look more specifically in the different directorates, which all have very different products and services they procure, and see what we could come in. I think that was a bit of an overview on that, but that really was an overview session, and we intend to go into it, I think, in more detail following members' questions.
Thank you very much for that. That was perfect. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Carlisle? Nobody online either? Okay. Can I just put the suggestion to you that we look at focusing on procurement as one of the questions that we have for our directors when they come in the next municipal year? What do people think about that as an idea? I see nodding heads in the room. Any comments or No, people tend to be in agreement online as well then. Okay, so let's carry that forward as an action then, because I one of the things that I really picked up from that working group was the impact of getting it right in terms of procurement, and I think it's really important. So I think that's something that would be good to focus on. So okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. That moves us on then. Timely to our director's update. Oh, Councillor Tudor's raised a hand. Okay, Councillor Tudor's raised a hand. So how does that work? How does he come in? Does he just come in? If he starts talking, will we hear him? Okay, Councillor Tudor, off you go.
Hello, can you hear me in the Civic Hall?
We can.
Oh, great. Just one sentence on going back to the bumblebees and biodiversity. The other day, and Councillor Dye was there as well in our ward, the Parks Department have a new technical officer for biodiversity she's called Vicky Baker, who used to be an ecologist, and she's now working on all sorts of biodiversity. And I wouldn't be surprised if across the city. So I just wanted to mention Vicky Baker because I shall be very interested in what work she's doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in on that one? Councillor Bowden.
Yeah, it's just to say, in regards to biodiversity and the impact on our wildlife, like bumblebees and butterflies. I know in Roundhay we are committing quite a substantial amount of area in the park for 2 new wildflower meadows. It's in conjunction with Tropical World as well. So in regards to bringing it forward, that might be some information that we could maybe bring in regards to what we mentioned about bringing it on the agenda. Maybe we could get some information about the impact and how it's going to develop. I think I'm just waiting on the staff officer for Roundhay Park to confirm when it's going to be taking place. But I think it's happening quite soon, actually, that development.
Thank you. Are you wanting to come in on that, Polly? No. I saw you hovering when Councillor Bowden said it was happening soon.
So we did it last year, so in conjunction with the butterfly conservation. So it will repeat each year and hopefully get bigger, and we're trying to see if we can do it across other parks as well. So there's a lot of development going on. So you're right, it'd be really good to bring that to the working group.
Brilliant. Thank you both for that contribution. So we can have an action as well to bring that to our working group when we look at that. Okay, thank you very much. So that brings us to item 9, which is our director's update, and we have Phil Evans with us today. So is there a presentation that's going to go with it? So who's in control of that? Oh, Phil should be able to share it. Phil, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And once again, apologies that I'm not there in person. My daughter unfortunately had surgery on Friday that was brought forward quite by some considerable time frame, so I'm relatively constrained. I'm trying also to share my screen, but my screen doesn't seem to be sharing. So if you could bear with me and tell me when you can see anything. But at the moment, okay, this is the best will in terms of being able to get things to work. Right, there we go. So now when I press that, can you see the presentation now?
We can see a zoomed in presentation, and we can see the kind of the slide sort of, oh no, now we can see the whole thing. So that looks fabulous. Yeah.
Is that better? Good. So first of all, thanks for the invite. Julie's Julie Lungworth, the director, is unfortunately double booked, so I'm a relatively poor substitute, I'm afraid. But what I've done is prepared a short presentation, realistically, to aid myself in terms of making sure that I'm covering the information that I think will be interest of the meeting. I can't see you now, unfortunately, so if there are any questions, if we want to take them at the end or shout up, depending on how the chair wants to run that, that's fine by me. I thought I'd start with the Leeds Children's Mayor Manifesto, and as most members will know, we have a Children's Mayor in Leeds. Mohammed, who's photographed on this slide, is the new Children's Mayor, and his manifesto was all about climate change. It was the one issue that he majored on in terms of his desire to see some significant change. And I start with this because I just think it's really, really heartening that actually young people in the city are absolutely focused on climate change being one of their major issues. And it sort of brings back to life what we in the Children's Directorate really need to keep at the heart of what we're doing. I won't read the slide for you, but as you can see, it's an issue that's close to Mohammed's heart, and very much it's one that we are going to use as we move forward in terms of some of the work that we're underway. The second thing to say again about listening to children's voices is that Child Friendly Leeds has 12 wishes, and they are effectively expressions of what children in the city want us to do. And again, they should be our North Star in the Directorate in terms of our activity and our practice. And there are two elements there that I just want to bring to the attention of the group, even though you undoubtedly will have seen them before. And the first one is that number 5 of the child wishes is that everyone takes more action to protect the environment from climate change. And then also I've included section wish 6, which is children and young people can travel around the city safely and easily. And whilst I think wish 5 is relatively straightforward, increasingly we're seeing that the environmental impact about travel across the city is also something that children are expressing a real interest in terms of their interaction and their engagement with the Directorate. So I think there's a developing area of work around what we do in relation to that particular work stream. If we centre back though on Child Friendly Leeds wish number 5, it's probably helpful to say that some short-term goals and some long-term goals have been identified primarily by children in relation to children and young people in the city. And the short-term goals are publish the Climate Action Plan with a link to the Children and Young People's Plan. Promotion to schools and settings to increase awareness of the climate action route map, to deliver eco and green team training for pupils, support third-party provision in schools and deliver twilight teacher workshops on climate education, and then to introduce awards to celebrate the best climate action by young people. So some real tangible short-term goals which have been set by young people in the city in relation to our work on climate change. And then helpfully there are some longer term goals around about how we link in with employment and skills, around green skills and opportunities, about how we establish targets for implementation by schools and settings, and then about how we identify and support best practice sharing between schools to amplify and accelerate school climate action. So there's quite a lot of activity, as you'd probably expect, around us trying to focus on those short-term goals with a view to those longer-term goals, because if we're going to make the Child Friendly Leeds wishes come to life, it really is about focusing on those and taking those forward. Just wanted to highlight that next week there's a secondary Eco Committee conference at the Civic Hall between 10 AM and 2 PM, which is a sharing event which aims to share, celebrate and learning around climate and environmental issues in secondary schools. And I know that the chair is chairing that meeting as well. And so at that afternoon, sort of mid-morning into afternoon, you'll hear from secondary schools who've taken positive action, give an opportunity to share for schools to share their eco groups and school council successes, discuss best ways to persuade others to take care and to take action on climate change, share ideas about how they can work together to create positive change, and then also find out about how resources and support for secondary schools can be shared so that we get that widest level of engagement. Also highlighting the fact that a young person's toolkit has been developed out of the Leeds inaugural Youth Summit on climate, which brought over 100 students from secondary schools. And again, that's about how do we make that live, how do we make it real, how do we make it tangible. And if members have never seen that, when you get the presentation, there's a link there that takes you to that. Sorry, went the wrong way. What I wanted to do realistically is, because the work of the directorate is incredibly broad, it picks up two main areas in terms of learning and education, but also children's social care. I wanted to just spend a little time on the education element, because there's some really fantastic work that's being done in that. And again, a couple of examples on the slides about where we're seeking to build engagement, bringing forward contractors to work with schools. And again, it's about making it real, maximising the opportunities that exist to work with schools to actually take forward the areas that are important to them. So the first one is about Vital Energy, one of the council's major contractors who are working with Strawberry Fields Primary School and Wood Primary School to deliver workshops. And then there's a second opportunity in relation to the Get Creative for Climate project, which has recently been launched just last week, where schools are being asked to identify and communicate their top environmental priorities to the climate. And again, there's a process set out in terms of how that will move forward, with a plan to bring that back to the committee on the 10th of July, so you can get a sense of the work that's being undertaken and some of the great ideas that are coming forward. I wanted to focus a little bit on our access team, who are the team of staff within the directorate who work in the area of schools, buildings and schools assets, because obviously there's a clear correlation between climate change and sustainable use of our assets. And what I've tried to set out in this slide is it's a bit of a busy slide, but I'll quickly try to run through it. Is that we're working through the rationalisation of the estate, working with colleagues in city development and Polly's team in relation to sustainable energy in that estate. We're working with the DFE as part of the schools rebuild programme on new carbon neutral schools. Again, as I've mentioned, working with Polly's team on the public sector decarbonisation scheme and looking for opportunities across the school estate that we can deliver improvements on that. We've also been trying to support schools to devise premises development plans, which effectively moves us away from the hardware and more into the facilities management of schools and how schools are operated on a daily basis. I also wanted just to highlight the work on education transport, and as members in particular will know, there's our increasing areas of demand in relation to education, health and care plans, which quite often, I was going to say invariably, but quite often bring forward a transport related requirement of provision. And we're working on how we're able to diversify that provision to a greater extent than we've done before, seeking to focus on independent travel training, where we work with individual young people who are in receipt of transport provision and work through their ability to get to their schools and settings in a different way that actually then reduces the transportation needs and also obviously the carbon implications from that transport. We're working with the West Silk, where we're trying to make sure that they can provide their own independent travel training service as well. And just finally, the school's working with the council's sustainable travel policy in relation to how we can actually make real difference in schools. I haven't done a slide on social care because the opportunities in social care are a little more limited, but what I wanted to bring out realistically in my last slide to you was that we don't want to rest on our laurels in the directorate. There's more work that needs to be done and more work that we've identified that needs to be done. So we're looking at whether there are greater opportunities for ultra low emission vehicles. We've got some trials in place in a social work office, and we need to capture the feedback from those trials, build the business cases that says ultra low emission vehicles are the way for us to go in terms of reducing our mileage. The directorate is the highest element of grey fleet mileage across the city council, and there's some stats there around just how significant mileage is in the directorate. Now, an element of that will be because of the nature of the way that we interact with children and families in the city, quite often in their own settings is a requirement, so their own homes or in neutral settings. So there's always going to be a requirement for some mileage, but we're very conscious of the fact of the implication that that has on us. We're also looking to see whether there are changes that we can make in relation to the transport arrangements that support our children looked after. And the key thing on that we want to bring forward is not only does that bring forward climate benefits in terms of reduced transport arrangements, but also there are the potential for some significant practice benefits that arise from that. We've had some really significant feedback from young people around the transport arrangements for children looked after can, to a certain extent, stigmatise children looked after because their transport arrangements are different from their peers when they are in schools. And so we're looking at that from both elements realistically. And then we are trying to take forward further independent travel training opportunities. A few issues around resource considerations, but we're trying to work our way through those because we think they are bringing real and meaningful benefits. And at that, I propose to stop and take any questions that you have. Conscious that that's a quick canter through and that you haven't had the presentation in advance, but if I just pause there and take any questions.
Thank you, Phil, for sharing that presentation, and thank you for your comments. I'm going to open it up to questions. First on my list is Councillor Carlill.
Thank you for that. It was coming back. It's really good. You had some detail there on the amount of mileage undertaken. I understand that obviously with a service such as yourselves going out to visit young people and their families around the city is an important part of what you do. But I just wanted to go into that a little bit deeper. Obviously, you mentioned moving to low emission vehicles, but I just wondered what was being undertaken in terms of reducing the need to travel or reducing the distance travelled, whether that's having people working closer to the people they visit in a day and looking at their rotas around that, or whether that's making visits a different method if it's possible and suitable.
Yeah, so it's a good question, Councillor Carlisle, and there are a number of threads to it realistically. The first one to say is that we're working very closely with our colleagues in asset management about the wider issues about asset rationalisation across the city, and we're absolutely a key element of taking forward that in conjunction with colleagues about us using the right buildings in the right locations. So you may have seen that there's some work being developed around family hubs, but it's very much about making sure that people understand that the buildings that we deliver our services from are a means to an end, and it's a service that counts. So we're trying to tackle any issues of proprietorialness in terms of individual buildings. We're also doing that in terms of children's centres and trying to maximise the use of children's centres and allow those to be areas for as much opportunity that we can do to bring activities together so that we reduce the level of travel. I think there's always going to be an element of at-home engagement with the service, and quite often there are significant benefits from doing that, much greater than actually sometimes imagined. And we do have issues about families in the city not really wanting to attend premises of organisations such as ourselves. So it is about making sure that we've got those opportunities, but at the same time it's about taking that sensible approach to workplace planning and making sure that where social workers and colleagues are doing those journeys, that they are looking to see how they have the least impact when those journeys can't be avoided. And then, as I say, there are some trials of electric vehicles that we're taking forward again, so where we're able to link those elements of mitigating the amount of mileage but also making it in a less polluting way as well. We're trying to do that as well.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that? Okay. Okay, thank you. So let's go to Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Phil, I was just interested when you pretty much opened up with your slides relating to perceptions regarding public transport. Recently, we've seen reports in the press reporting just how poorly the bus service is in West Yorkshire. It was perceived to be the worst in the country. And we then read reports that young adults are leaving Leeds because of the public transport network and how poorly it operates. So I'm just wondering how much further down that goes. Are you seeing, what sort of attitudes are you seeing from young children? And what's their perception of public transport? Are they receiving feedback from their parents?
So there's quite a bit of anecdotal feedback from young people, and I think it's a myriad of feedback, to be honest. Some of which definitely has a connection back to the climate emergency, but some of it that doesn't. So that there's feedback around perception of safety on vehicles, individual safety. There's a perception that there are issues associated, not at the hubs, so not in towns and the city centre, but there are perceptions of real connectivity issues in localities, and can you actually get on a bus to get you somewhere, so there's a challenge around that. I think by and large the feedback around what the bus operators have delivered in relation to the changes that they made to the sustainability of bus transport is very, very warmly welcomed. And I think we sometimes underestimate the ability of young people to recognise those changes and, you know, to positively feedback on that. The key thing I think for putting it up is that when it was written as a wish, it was very much written on that, how do young people get to where they need to get to? But I think over time, it's that wish is broadening and taking that wider perspective on, it isn't just about, it's not just a means to an end. There is a real issue about sustainability that's at the heart of what our young people are telling us. And we, I think, need to do some further work on that in the directorate so that we don't look at that wish just about, well, how do you get, you know, young person A from point 1 to point 2. It's also about how do we get them there and what are their feelings on the way that we may have got them there.
Thank you. Anybody else with any questions? Okay, so can I come in with some of my own then, please? Phil, the first one was, you mentioned social work vehicle trials. Would it be possible to share the feedback from those trials with us? Because I think that would be really helpful for us to know.
Yes, definitely. I can get some information and share it with the members. Broadly positive. I think the overwhelming feedback from social workers where they've been trialled is we really need more of them, and that the more vehicles that they have, the more vehicles that they would use. And I think we've just got to get through the business case of what that looks like. And I think there's probably some more work for us to do in capturing some of the metrics that sit behind that, so that we can provide that business case to Polly's team to actually enable us to take that forward. But broadly supportive, and I think social workers, if they were given the tools to actually use more electric vehicles, they would be willing to do so. We've also got the challenge, of course, about how do you get the infrastructure in place at these locations, but that's a challenge that I dare say every employer in the city has. So it's not something that we have to reinvent a wheel on.
Okay, thank you. And it will be good to have that as a document if we can, when you've got that ready for us. That'd be really good to see. The other one that I wanted to ask about was one of the things that we've been asking all directorates about is adaptations to a changing climate, and I wondered what kind of work was going on in that respect. I certainly remember back to the horrendous few days towards the end of the summer term of the previous year when schools were absolutely sweltering. I wondered what kind of work's been going on following that.
I'd have to go back and ask colleagues in the assets and access team for that in particular, but I could get that information and share that to them. I know that adaptation is something that they're aware of, and I think that there is a challenge in terms of the amount of resources that are available and the fact that we are very much beholden in a number of respects to the DFE in relation to the DFE's overarching approach to that. But if I can, Chair, I'll take that away and have a conversation with Sally Lowe, who leads that team, and come back to you with some much more detailed information.
Yes, please. That would be really helpful. Thank you. And then one about the teacher workshops and best practice sharing that you mentioned. What kind of detail can you share with us about that in terms of work that's going on with schools?
Again, I haven't got that detail to hand, but I'll get that from Stephen Rouse, who coordinates that, and I'll get that shared around people.
Thank you. That would be really good, because one of the things that I think we see across the city is there is some brilliant climate work going on in individual schools, but a lot of it is dependent on having a committed member or small group of staff who are carrying that work forwards. And it would be great to see if there's work across the city to let that be a bit more consistent. So it would be good to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and absolutely. And on that point, I think that's the very point of some of the work that we're doing, is to get those good stories out, to get those connections and networking made. But I do think you are right. We've got to mainstream some of that activity a lot more than possibly has been done up until now.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, and I think that ties in with the targets for the climate action route map you mentioned. You know, that again, that's a really good piece of work. But it would be great to have confidence that it was spread across all the schools rather than a committed few. So yeah, detail on that would be really good. Thank you. And I think that's probably it from me, except to the Get Creative for the Climate work. Are there comms that you can share that we could distribute? Because I think a lot of us have really close links with our schools, and I certainly would be really keen to get as many schools active in that as possible.
Yes, definitely, we can sort that out.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the last thing, Rachel reminded me that we have the Children's Mayor coming to a future SEAC meeting, so that would be great to be able to pick up on that. And I'm sure we would all be really happy to work on the Get Creative work in any way that we can do to support that. I think that'd be great. Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions? Take my glasses off so I can see. No, that doesn't look like we do. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for attending us.
Cheers then. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us on to Stacey. Thank you for your patience, Stacey. And Stacey's going to present to us with an update on the development of West Yorkshire Mass Transit Network. So do you have a presentation to share, Stacey?
I do, if I can work out how to share it. I think my computer's just thinking about it. So whilst it thinks about it, for those that maybe just joined us, I'm Stacey White. I'm head of Mass Transit Place and Consents at the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and I'm here today to give you an update on mass transit and to talk you through the emerging outcomes in terms of our sustainability strategy, which is in development at the minute. My slideshow doesn't seem to want to present.
Looks like something's happening.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's what we like to hear. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Right, so if I do it from the beginning of the slideshow then, and hopefully you'll be able to see that full screen now.
We can see it as the kind of presenter view where we can see the next slide.
Okay.
I don't know whether there's. I know there is a way that you can switch the view so that we don't see the presenter, but I don't really know how.
Me neither. 1 minute, try this one. I'm used to working with Microsoft Teams, that's it.
Yep.
You can see full screen now.
Yep, that looks perfect. Thank you.
Great stuff, thank you. Okay, well, thanks for inviting me today. So as I said, I'm here to talk to you about mass transit. So we all know that West Yorkshire's a fantastic place to live and work, and there's so much that there is on offer. And we recognise that that opportunity is limited by poor connectivity. And that's really why we're investing in mass transit with a clear vision to join up parts of our region, whether that's urban or rural, with a fully integrated public transport network. So the ambition really is for a better and more efficient and affordable offer that's enjoyable for people to use. It's about making transport safer, cleaner, more reliable, and really driving behaviour change to reduce congestion on the roads. This will obviously in turn help to make walking, cycling and wheeling safer and more pleasant. And we're aiming to make it easier to find travel information and to buy a one ticket that enables you to travel on all modes of public transport. And in developing this scheme, it's very much environment first. So we're developing it with an environment in mind, recognising the contribution that sustainable transport can make in terms of achieving our goal of carbon neutrality as a region by 2038. So in terms of a phased approach to mass transit, obviously we can't deliver a fully integrated West Yorkshire network in one fell swoop. So we're going to be taking a phased approach and one phase at a time. And that's very much how other cities that have got mass transit systems started, with a hub, a central point that offers opportunity for further extension and future phases to really develop and build out that West Yorkshire network. So as the most concentrated centres for business, leisure and retail activity in West Yorkshire, the first phase is going to be focused on Bradford and Leeds city centres, and they'll be the hubs in terms of being the heart of the system. So phase one includes 2 lines serving Leeds and Bradford, as I've just said. The first being the Leeds line and then the Bradford line as well. And they're highlighted on this plan with the red lines showing us how the Leeds and Bradford lines fits in terms of that wider West Yorkshire integrated network. So for the Leeds line, work is currently underway in terms of considering route options, and we're exploring a range of destinations and areas that we'd like to serve, including destinations such as the arena, Elland Road, the universities and the hospitals. And the Leeds lines are the sort of most feasible options that maximise support for the visitor economy and really sit in the context of a wider regeneration plan. So as I said, the Leeds line will be taking people between St James's Hospital through Leeds City Centre onto the White Rose Shopping Centre. And this line's really about linking the regional centre with key housing growth and regeneration areas to the south. And in terms of Leeds City Centre, this really ties into the Leeds Vision that has been launched and supported by government just recently. And then from there, we're going to continue to work with colleagues over the border into Kirklees to bring forward a future case for connectivity to major housing growth areas towards Dewsbury. So moving on to the Bradford line, which will connect people between Bradford city centre stations and Leeds city centre stations. This ties into Bradford Council's plans to regenerate the Southern Gateway, including a new train station. So it'll be a key part in terms of shaping the Bradford line, and will define the city's future transport hub. The siting of the station is yet to be determined, but this will be a likely factor in terms of helping us to link from Leeds City Station to Bradford stations, and further work will be undertaken with Bradford Council to determine this. So this line will complement the parallel fast city-to-city electrified rail service. So there's been sort of questions around. It were perhaps at the combined authority meeting last week, where we were presenting this first phase about why the Bradford line, and the suggestion that it replicates the intercity link that already exists. But the challenge is that intercity connection doesn't work effectively at the minute, because it has to make quite a few stops. So that city to city movement is slowed down, and that's where mass transit can step in and take on some of the stops in between, essentially, to enable the heavy rail link to operate in an effective way, in the way that it should do. And as I've already referenced, that final bullet point is about connecting with Bradford's plans to regenerate the Southern Gateway, including the new station development. So in terms of timescales, as I said, development's currently underway in terms of developing both the lines, and we'll be submitting our strategic outline case for phase 1 to the Department for Transport at the end of March 2024. That was approved by the Combined Authority last week. Construction's programmed to commence in 2028. And we will be undertaking a public consultation exercise in summer this year to seek feedback on the proposed 2 lines and the route options within those 2 corridors. So moving on to the sustainability strategy. So building on the mass transit vision and integrating sustainability into every aspect of the region's mass transit system. So that's really through planning, design, through to construction and operation. And that's what the sustainability strategy is about, and why we're developing it at such an early stage, so that the principles and the outcomes really are embedded from the outset. And the outcomes are established to ensure that there are specific targets that are actively measured and monitored, that will help us in terms of guiding it through the design process and in informing decision making as well. Now, the sustainability strategy has been developed in consultation with district partner authorities, including Leeds City Council officers as well. So we've had a series of workshops with officers to share what our emerging priority outcomes are and seek feedback from that. So the sort of final draft sustainability strategy is being developed in a really collaborative manner, and really sort of it's led to an improved outcome, really, in terms of getting your officers local knowledge and expertise. We're seeking to utilise international accreditation and certification schemes to ensure that sustainability best practice is followed, such as PAS 2080. And the way that the sustainability strategy outcomes are going to be achieved is through 4 main pillars. So that's transport, environmental, social and economic. And over the next few slides, I'll talk to you in some detail in terms of what those 4 pillars are and the outcomes within. So pillar 1 is transport, and the key focus for this area is for mass transit to establish a modern and attractive transport system for West Yorkshire. And the outcomes for this pillar is about providing an attractive alternative to the private car, and really driving positive change in terms of travel patterns and travel choices, and reducing reliance on the private car. And about mass transit stops and interchanges that are really integrated and well connected to public areas, so that it's a seamless transition from different modes of transport, and that people can use different modes depending on what type of journey that they want to take. So we could do this by providing faster, high capacity and more direct transport options, frequent and reliable services, resilient infrastructure with fewer weather disruptions, which we know over time is probably going to be more frequent in nature. Safer, more accessible, comfortable and convenient and affordable journeys. Better links with walking and cycling facilities and other public transport services, and initiatives to support greater uptake of mass transit. And as I've referenced on an earlier slide, making sure that travel information's readily available and people find it easy to use the system and switch between modes. And then just towards the bottom of the slide there, just an indication of how we're proposing to measure that. So moving on to pillar 2, the key focus for this pillar is improving air quality and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And as part of these efforts, we'll aim to minimise waste, enhance local biodiversity, restore habitat, mitigate flood and climate impacts, limit natural resource use, minimise noise from road traffic, and respect our communities and cultural heritage. So in terms of the outcomes for the environment pillar, it's about managing carbon emissions in new infrastructure and buildings through project delivery. It's about minimising whole life greenhouse gas emissions for the project, and it's about making sure that mass transit is aligned with local and regional net zero ambitions as well. So how we're going to go about doing this. So it's about opportunities to avoid, switch and improve resource use to minimise emissions. It's about construction that minimises natural resource use. It's about reusing rather than using new materials. It's about ensuring that we explore potential to utilise renewable power. And it's about infrastructure that avoids the destruction and supports the creation of natural habitats. And it's about using low carbon materials through construction vehicles and equipment. And again, just at the bottom of the slide, in terms of how we would measure this, so developing a carbon management plan and clear reduction targets, developing a monitoring system that reports carbon throughout the system life cycle, sustainability and behavioural change, training hours for the workforce, and assessing tree cover and habitat creation. So moving on to pillar 3, within this pillar, the key focus for mass transit includes social value, skills and employment, and contributions to improvements in equity, equality, diversity and inclusion through transport. And we'll really prioritise delivering social benefits for the region through improving health and well-being of people and communities, access to public spaces, providing safe and secure journeys, and supporting levelling up. So in terms of social value, skills and employment, the outcomes identified for this element is providing local employment, apprenticeships and training opportunities to communities through project delivery and operation. It's about supporting our regional economy through local businesses, small, medium enterprises and voluntary community and social enterprises. And it's about promoting high standards and accountability through construction. And we're proposing to do this by providing employment, apprenticeships, internships, and volunteering programs and initiatives. It's about schools and communities and business engagement to cultivate the skills necessary to build and operate the system. It's about partnership with local and regional businesses and enterprise, and it's about best practice to maximise the construction impact on communities. And we'll measure this through targeted numbers of local people and groups employed, local spend, apprenticeships, volunteering initiatives, and so on. Second slide on in terms of pillar 3 social is under the equity, equality, diversity and inclusion element. So it's about making sure the design demonstrates how we will meet and implement our obligations in this regard, and developing accessible design that's usable by all people regardless of their age, gender, language, ability, background or circumstance. We want to make sure that it's accessible to all. It's about presenting information that doesn't create barriers to using the system. It's about providing a safe and secure system, including stops and public spaces, so that the system integrates into the local area, and that the stops aren't inhibiting people's ability to use the system in a safe and secure way. And it's about design that's representative of the community's diversity and lived experience. And the way that we can find that out is through engagement with in terms of wider public engagement and public consultation, but also engaging user groups as well that have got real life lived experience that we can really learn from. So how we're going to measure this through measuring accessibility at stations and interchanges. It's about equality and distributional reviews at key decision points, as I said, to engage those user groups so that we can make real improvements to the scheme based on that experience. And it's about monitoring and reporting accessibility, equity and inclusivity across the transport system. And then last but not least, pillar 4, which is the economic pillar, and the key focus areas for mass transit include better access to education and housing, as well as customer value and value for money. And we'll focus on boosting productivity, supporting economic recovery and enabling inclusive economic growth through ticket pricing, research and partnerships and innovations and digital solutions. So in terms of the outcomes for the economic pillar, the first is supporting policy-driven redevelopment and regeneration. And mass transit really is a catalyst for wider development and opportunity. So when we introduce mass transit into the area, that will act as a catalyst to help regenerate the areas which mass transit is going to serve. And we can do this by providing opportunities for addressing population growth, changing demographics, economic activity and infrastructure pressures. Measures to minimise and offset social, economic and environmental impacts where possible. Sustainable and inclusive features such as green streets, urban drainage, road safety and energy efficient technologies. And in terms of how we're going to go about measuring it, it's about reviewing economic, social and ecological indicators such as local job creation and the ability to retain those jobs within West Yorkshire. It's about community cohesion, economic growth, household incomes, which if they increase, that's an indicator that clearly it's having a positive impact. The environmental value and user affordability, and also about assessing and reviewing system impacts, risks and opportunities. And then the final slide in terms of the economic pillar is about customer value and value for money. So in terms of the outcome around this, it's about providing good value for money for the region and for customers by providing a system that considers and balances spend with wider benefits and value. It's about a ticketing system that's fair and prices that consider travel needs and patterns. The ticketing system in terms of justifying this significant investment in the region, the ticketing system and the fares that we're able to charge will really enable us to deliver the scheme. It's about information about ticketing and how people can take advantage of affordable travel, and it's about design that benefits natural resources and systems. And we can measure this through quantifying costs and benefits from mass transit, comparing ticketing prices and structures against other forms of transport and regions to make sure that it's sustainable. And it's about understanding customer views on affordability, and reviewing the wider costs in terms of people going about the business and using social retail and education facilities. So in terms of where we are now, in terms of sustainability strategy, we're basically here in terms of the programme. So we have developed sustainable design principles. We will be moving on to setting targets and indicators. As I've already said, we're planning public consultation in summer. So we will, within that public consultation exercise, be inviting views on the sustainability strategy and the outcomes within. And it's then moving on to design for sustainable construction, measuring sustainability scores, and then that enters into construction and commissioning before then moving into operation. So I'll not read through all those stages because hopefully you can see for yourself on the screen. But as I said, it's really the sustainability strategy is really about demonstrating our strategic objectives that we set through the mass transit vision, demonstrates how environmental, social and economic issues will be considered in the development and delivery of mass transit system, and that we're developing a framework that we can actively monitor against so that we can demonstrate commitment to meeting those objectives and outcomes. And then we've got the ability to use that information to shape a better transport system that's more sustainable effectively. So in terms of further information, there's further information available on the West Yorkshire Combined Authority website. There's a web page on mass transit where you can find out further information. You can also sign up to Your Voice, which will help you to keep up to date in terms of all consultation and engagement projects that we're progressing. And we've also got an email inbox as well, which is masstransit@westyorkshire.ca.gov.uk. So if you have any further questions that you don't think of today and want to follow those up, then please feel free to do so. So appreciate that's taken just over 20 minutes now. So thank you for your time and patience in terms of listening to that. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stacey. That was a really interesting run through. I really appreciate you putting the slides together. I'm opening up for questions now, and I'm going to go to Councillor Thompson first.
Thank you very much. Just two brief comments and a question, if that's okay. I'll try and keep it concise. So really encouraged. I was going to ask a question, then spotted in the papers that renewable energy generation is to be considered as part of it, which I'm really keen to see. Be good to hear more on that as it develops. The question, how can we make sure we link in as early as possible to the employment and skills work, just being aware of the lead times involved in getting the further in higher education institutions involved? Just for context, I sit on the West Yorkshire Employment and Skills Committee, so it's something that's very much on my mind. And how do we push that engagement in green jobs, in infrastructure jobs, in engineering and otherwise, and encourage young people to engage in those and find out more about them? Not just young people, also reskilling other people already in the workforce or on the fringes of it. And then, just really pleased to see the discussion on accessibility, that's built in from the very outset rather than being an afterthought. Just memories of the bendy bus and how great that was with a pram. And looking forward to something even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of education and skills, it's something that we're very much interested in, and we've obviously got fantastic educational institutions within West Yorkshire that we've got strong and established relationships with. So we're already engaged in conversations in terms of influencing curriculums and developing courses with those providers to make sure that we do deliver skills in the right place, to make sure that whatever phase or stage we're in terms of mass transit programme, that there's the education out there to make sure that we can create those skills within West Yorkshire and retain those individuals.
Thank you. Did you want to come back in on that? Okay, super. I'll bring in Councillor McCluskey.
Hi, I just wanted to know, I've lived in Leeds now 34 years, and in those 34 years, we've had a tram proposal, a trolley bus proposal. What's different with this mass transport proposal?
So I think that the difference is that it's not just a Leeds scheme. So the starting point for the slides was that we're developing an integrated transport vision for West Yorkshire, so it's at a regional level. So we're not just considering mass transit in isolation. Yes, it's a scheme, but it only works effectively if it's part of an integrated public transport offer where people can move seamlessly between modes. So it's about working out, if somebody's going about the daily lives, they might need to walk for the first or wheel for the first half a mile, then jump on a tram to do 2 stops, and then move on to heavy rail for the final part of the journey. So it's about making sure that it's seamless integration. So I think that's where it differs. It differs because it's considered a West Yorkshire context and even beyond the boundaries of West Yorkshire, and also it's a multimodal proposal. So we're developing our local transport plan, for example, LTP4 for West Yorkshire, and there was a report that went to the Combined Authority on that last week, and mass transit is going to be a significant scheme referenced within that wider strategic context, making sure that different modes of transport work together as one integrated transport system.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Stacey. So I've got Councillor Foster next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Stacey. I was looking through the report earlier, and there was one particular part, page 26, when there's pretty much admit that the scheme generally is going to take many years to deliver a future mass transit network. I think the word many years, my heart sunk at that a little bit. So what I wanted to understand was, what's slowing that down? What's restricting the scheme moving faster? Is it finances? Is it the phasing of the money? Is it the skills that are available within WICA? Is it resources? Or is it planning? So I just wanted to understand, we see the WICA banner, but I don't really know what's going on behind there. How many people are actually involved in this mass transit scheme? And also, with the bus franchising just being announced, does that impact or negatively or positively on the planning of mass transit?
Yeah, so I think taking the last point first, I think bus franchising impacts in a positive way, and it really is because of that ambition to deliver an integrated network, and really buses are a feeder service for mass transit to enable the multimodal journeys that I've already referenced. So we very much feel that bus reform is going to have a positive impact in terms of mass transit, because it will better enable us to deliver that integrated vision. In terms of what's holding back scheme delivery, we've clearly got a number of quite significant hurdles to jump before we get a fully funded, consented scheme for phase 1 even. And if you look at delivery of other tram systems across the country and even beyond, They take a lot of time to get off the ground in terms of planning and through to construction, and then testing phase, and then through to operation. So I think that the ambition to get a fully operating sort of phase one in the early 2030s is a very, very ambitious one, and we're looking at ways which we can accelerate the programme. Now, funding is one of the many issues that schemes like this face. It's really reassuring that government in many recent announcements are really supportive of West Yorkshire Mass Transit. We've seen it in a lot of recent government announcements, including the Leeds Vision, which I referenced earlier, that there's a clear recognition that mass transit will enable us to unlock areas of growth within Leeds, and the government recognise that. So I think the funding hurdle, we're hearing a lot of really positive support coming out of government, which is really reassuring and can only lead us in a better direction. It's also worth mentioning this context about the consenting process, because we have to work through a business case process to prove the concept to unlock the funding for mass transit. But alongside that, we've also got to submit something called a Transport and Works Act order application, which will essentially grant us the planning consent to be able to construct the scheme and enable us to purchase the land as well. So we'll acquire the land rights to deliver the scheme as well. And that's a really lengthy process potentially. So what we need to do is continue working closely with colleagues in government departments so that they've got full visibility of when we're going to submit that Transport and Works Act order, but also so that we can make sure that the application's in the best possible state at the point of submission, so that it will enable the Secretary of State to make a decision as soon as possible after submission, so that we're not held up in the planning system. So that will probably in a roundabout way sort of in terms of funding, consent, there's many things that have the potential to hold up delivery of the transport, the mass transit system, but we're working really hard to work with government and partners such as Leeds City Council to make sure that we can accelerate that deliver where possible.
Sorry, can I just a quickie, because you didn't quite answer all the question. What I was
Sorry.
wondering about was the resourcing of the team that's working with yourself. I'd like to know how big that team is and how big it should be. And then I just wanted to know, does the bus franchising eat into that resource? Do you see? Because you've got a very busy group that are now scratching around trying to sort the buses out.
Yeah, no, it doesn't eat into the resource. So we've got a mass transit directorate that's now being created within the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and we're busy planning a resourcing plan to fully resource that team. Clearly, creating a new directorate, that takes time to recruit to roles, and there's also a need for quite technical roles within it that we perhaps might not have the skill set easily at hand. So what we're trying to currently work out is, where do we need to bring in consultant resource to support our internal client team, and where can we or where do we have the ability to recruit locally? And I think that plays back to the previous question in terms of the skills and expertise within West Yorkshire, and why it's really important that we learn lessons as we go to work out what do we need to make sure that we've got the skills and expertise locally that we can tap into for future phases. So in terms of the directorate, it's a mass transit directorate. So we have got our own directorate for mass transit, and it's a separate team that's working on bus reform. And clearly, since the decision was taken last week, there will now be a need to upscale to quite a significant degree the resource within the bus reform team as well. So that's something that's going on as well alongside. In terms of consultant team, which is not uncommon for schemes of this size. We've got various consultants working with us, such as legal support partner, land and property consultants. We've got design team as well. We have an environmental partner as well for mass transit. They're supporting us in developing sustainability strategy, for example. So we've got a really, really wide team split across internal and external. And also we're working very closely. We our own departments across planning, regeneration, highways, to make sure that we utilise district authorities, resource and expertise where they exist.
So just a quick one then.
Yep.
Specifically, people just working specifically on mass transit. How many people at Wirecat in that team?
I've not got the numbers off the top of it. It's a relatively small team at the minute. In terms of the structure that's been approved, I think it's a total of 48 posts in total for the directorate. And I think we're probably standing at around 10, 12 at the minute.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for your answer on that one, Stacey. I did have on my list Councillor Harrington next, but all your faces have disappeared from my screen. So I'm assuming you still want to come in, Councillor Harrington.
Yes, please, Chair, thank you very much. Although Mike did ask a couple of little bits. So you mentioned about the ambition is that it's an urban and rural mass transit system. And I guess that links to the buses and the franchising of buses. It also said that there wouldn't be any building work starting until 2028. So that's actually quite a long time before we're actually going to see any improvement to any of the transport systems within the outer areas. Glad to see that Wetherby was actually on the map this time. Thank you very much for that, because it's been long awaited. And just a couple of points really about accessibility. Accessibility for wheelchair users. I get an awful lot of stuff at the moment about where I can't use there's no accessible toilet at a bus station, etc. So can we just make sure that we are looking at accessibility of all types for people who are wheelchair users, mobility scooter users, those that are partially sighted, may well be deaf. So are we going to have much more of those kind of infrastructures in place in those hubs and mass transit sites? And then the final point that I just want to make really is what's happening with ticketing into cross-border situations. So there's an awful lot of Leeds and West Yorkshire that have other authorities bordering them. So at the moment, the lunacy of it is I can get a bus to Harrogate on one bus ticket, but I can't use any bus coming back from Harrogate to get back to Wetherby again because it's in West Yorkshire. So whether it's Bradford or whether it's, where Councillor Thompson lives or wherever, there are areas around the whole of the city where you will have cross-border issues. I'm just wondering how they're going to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would need to take the ticketing beyond the West Yorkshire boundary away and come back to you and speak to colleagues in transport policy that are working on the local transport plan. But I do know that the conversations are underway with South Yorkshire Mail Combined Authority, for example, because of that issue, because there is a recognition that the world doesn't start and stop in West Yorkshire, that people want to get beyond the boundary. Some people live outside of the boundary and want to come in to West Yorkshire to work or to enjoy the free time. So I do know that work's underway, but I'm sorry I can't answer that question quite today. I fully agree with rest of the points that you raised in terms of making sure that we fully test whether facilities are accessible. And as I said during the presentation, we will only find that out by consulting and sharing the proposals with people that have got lived experience, so that they can share that lived experience with us, and that will lead to an improved scheme.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on my list, I've got Councillor Rafiq.
Thanks, Chair. I I know it's early days, and we've still got to get the money to get the ball rolling, I suppose. So there's still water to go under the bridge, I'm afraid, on this. We've seen it come and go, some schemes in the past, so I'm still holding my breath on this. But can I just say, in terms of the St James's to White Rose, does that go beyond St James's into East Leeds? Or I may have missed, what you said. And is there one still plans to go to Roundhay Park as well within Leeds? I know there's the wider kind of plan to connect, the cities and towns within West Yorkshire, but within Leeds, is that still the case? Certainly, this was the regional plan, which got shelved years ago.
So in terms of, hopefully you're aware of the mass transit vision that were adopted by the Combined Authority last year. If you've not had the chance to read that, I would encourage it, because that shows what the vision is in terms of the West Yorkshire vision and the places that have been identified that we want to connect via a mass transit network. In terms of phase 1, the Leeds line, which you referred to, is from St James's down to White Rose, so it's not out to East Leeds. So we've gone through a process in developing our strategic outline case for mass transit, which is the document that I said we're submitting to the Department for Transport at the end of this month. And that process that we've been through whittled down the phase 1 candidate corridors, of which there was 4 that were set out in the mass transit vision, to the first phase, which is the 2 corridors on the Leeds line and the Bradford line. So phase 1 won't be going to East Leeds.
Thank you, Stacey. Next question I have is from Councillor Tudor.
Hi. So, as most of you know, I'm quite a disruptor, or I ask very simple questions. But when you say we want to connect, I mean, who's decided that we want any of this? Is it WICA? That's question 1. Like buying land. How is this going to work between Leeds and Bradford? Will it run along the road system? Is it like a bus planned like the Manchester tram buses with an electric overhead? What's wrong with the train route that takes 20 minutes between Leeds and Bradford? So 3 questions there.
So as I think I said within the presentation, it's not about the Leeds to Bradford connection, as in it's not trying to replicate heavy rail, because that's what heavy rail provides at the minute. It provides a connection from Leeds to Bradford, and it provides it relatively well. It's relatively fast. The challenge is the connections in between. So if we're able to deliver a mass transit system that goes Leeds to Bradford, for example, and stops at multiple points in between, then that will then free capacity up on the heavy rail network by enabling that Leeds to Bradford with no stop intercity connection. So mass transit's not trying to replicate what heavy rail currently does. What it will do is it will help alleviate the congestion that there is on that system as it stands. In terms of the places to connect and how they were identified, so they were identified, so it were West Yorkshire Combined Authority working in partnership with the 5 districts within West Yorkshire. And it started off, the connectivity infrastructure plan was the starting point. So looking at what the connectivity issues and transport challenges were across West Yorkshire, and then identifying where connectivity improvements were most needed. So that led to an identified list of places that we as a collective wanted or recognised needed to be connected up, and then that was then presented through the mass transit vision. So if you look in the mass transit vision, it shows the places that the mass transit vision and the scheme is trying to connect, essentially in recognition of the role that those places serve in the wider region. Has that answered all of your questions? You said there were 3, but I don't know whether I've missed one of them.
Land was another bit.
what was
Talked
it
about buying, you
specifically?
talked about
Buy-
buying land. I just don't want it to turn into HS2, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, clearly we're not going to start buying land up unless there is a degree of certainty that we're able to deliver this scheme. And when I reference the hurdles that we need to jump, the first hurdle is submitting the strategic outline case to the Department for Transport, so that we get the green light to continue, that will unlock the finances to deliver the scheme. Now, in terms of our ability to purchase land, yes, we could use some of the funds that we already have from government. We've got a £200 million development fund to progress the scheme. We could use some of that in terms of the funding, the ability to use that funding. We could use some of that to start purchasing land, but clearly we don't want to blight land. We don't want to start purchasing property until we know, one, where the lines are going to go, because we're not at that stage at the minute. We're still at a stage where we know we want to connect Leeds and Bradford, and what the termination points are, roughly where the termination points are, but we've got several route options for each of those lines that we've yet to consult on, which is what we're going to be doing in summer. So we can't realistically start moving to purchase land because we don't know what any of those options, how we can get through the consultation process and what the community views are going to be on those options, to enable us then to determine what an emerging preferred option might be, to then start to move to purchase land. So I would say that purchasing land is quite a way off.
And thank you. So this is a really, really basic question. This is like, Leeds to Bradford. Is there a thought? Is the thought that this will happen on an existing road?
So in terms of design feasibility, what we're looking at, so when I mentioned the places to connect, they're nodes, what we refer to as nodes. So we're looking at any options that there might be to connect between those nodes. So that might be road, it might be disused rail infrastructure, it might be running alongside existing rail infrastructure. So we're looking at any feasible options that means that it's possible to connect the points that we want to connect.
Okay. And is there any thought at all on the type of vehicles that will run this, like, for example, the Manchester Bombardier trams? Is that what they're thinking of? Or
so in terms of the West Yorkshire network, it's likely to be different technologies and different vehicle types that are likely to lend themselves to different areas of the network. For the first phase, we very much see tram as being the preferred technology choice, but we do have a lot more work in terms of proving the business case for tram. But we think that phase one is an ideal area for tram.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Stacey, for that answer. So next I've got on my list, Councillor Anderson.
Thanks. Bearing in mind all the issues that you've got and the fact that 90% of our carbon emissions are coming from transport, you've highlighted that you won't be making significant start till the early 2030s. The bus franchising, as they confirmed last week, it will be 2027 at the earliest before any impact is made. And our role is to be an advisory climate change committee. Should we be looking at our targets again of 2030? And should we be inviting West Yorkshire Combined Authority to look again? Because it's taking you this, it doesn't matter how successful you could be, the most brilliant group of people that are around and work to 100% efficiency, but you're still going to be delivering in the 2030s. So if there's any mistakes, any hold-ups, any government intervention, any public inquiries, you're going to struggle. So do you think we should be reconsidering our climate change targets as a result of this?
40%. 40% is transport.
No, it's 90% here.
40% of our emissions are transport.
20 paragraph 2.6 says 90%.
The current emissions.
Transport emits the most carbon in West Yorkshire. With more than 90% of transport emissions coming from cars and vans.
9% carbon tax, yes.
Yeah.
40%.
Yeah, but unless you do something about that.
Sorry, in your original. Sorry, no, I'm debating.
Point, yeah, sorry. But in your original statement, Barry, sorry, you said 90% of emissions come from transport.
Well,
40% of emissions come from transport, of which 90% of that is from cars and private vehicles.
Even still,
just wanted to make that clear.
I know. The point I'm trying to make is, should we? Because otherwise, forgetting about the politics of it, both the council and WICA could be setting themselves up to fail against their targets. Whereas if you acknowledge early enough in the cycle, maybe Leeds needs to go to 2032 now, for example. I'm only trying to say so that we can actually deliver it, because if we're going to be up against it through no fault of anybody in Leeds City Council, because I don't think there's a thing anybody in Leeds City Council can do about franchising or about the mass transit. There is no accusations that it's Leeds that's going to be holding things up. It's going to be the system in both instances. So I'm just asking what your view is. Do you think, even from a WICA perspective, they should be reviewing their target?
So, Stacey, I don't know whether you want to come in on this one. Polly would also like to come in, so I'm happy for Polly to come in first.
I would just be brief and say that I don't think we can afford not to try and hit that target. And I think the thing is, it's about collective action. So mass transit and bus reform are one of many things that we absolutely need to do as a collective to hit that target. So my own, and it's a personal view rather than WICA's view, my own personal view is that we can't afford to reduce that target.
Thank you, Stacey. And did you want to come in, Polly?
I think just to say, when we set our 2030 target, there was some context around it in terms of the limitations in terms of national policy context, and that we would do everything within our own powers to get as far as we can. I'm not sure that's changed. And I think as a council, we've still got the ambition and we recognise the need to move at speed. You know, you're right that 2030 is going to be held back by other parts, but I think it's more about the fact that actually there is that urgency and the speed of travel. And so I don't think the target's the be all and end all. It's more about the fact that we take every decision and everything we do as a council in order to hit as far, do as much as we can.
I'm not asking us to not deliver as quickly as we possibly can. What I'm saying is, so that taking the politics out of it, I mean, fine, okay, so let's be political about it a minute. So it comes to late 2029 and you're not going to make your target. People like me are going to say, well, told you so. And, you know, that's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. It'd be far better to say now and then rephase everything so that we can then meet the target, because I don't want us to fail. I'm not arguing that we should fail. What I'm saying is it's powers beyond our control that are going to determine our ability to deliver the 2030. And in WICA, because we've already heard it's going to be in the early 2030s before WICA have got a scheme off the ground. It's then going to take them, what, another 10 years to get to maybe phase 2?
Thank you. I would echo the points that we have to have the urgency that having those targets brings us, and I absolutely wouldn't want to roll back on that at all. Councillor Carlisle.
Yeah, I had a question about mass transit, but I'll just add him on. The transport strategy clearly quite says that we don't get all the way, and that's the conversation that we had at that point of the transport strategy, and that's why some of that's in there and around what can we change. You're completely right that these deadlines are later than would allow us to meet some of those targets, but as well, the combined authority has a target of 2038. The separate districts have different targets as well. So that's the bit of the quagmire that, in a way, I think we've had this conversation previously at one point. My view at that time was, I think focusing on the target is sort of an aside. Focusing on doing what you can do as fast as you can is probably where we're going. So I think we kind of agree on that. And the only point I was making earlier was just getting the numbers correct. I don't want 90%, being the one responsible for transport. I don't want 90% of the carbon emissions to be my fault rather than just the 40% that currently is. And on the mass transit thing, I think as I've seen it go through in the detail from when the first report started coming in, and I think we've done something reasonably clever with this one from the combined authority side, because what it did was not necessarily look at where we've got stuck before. I mean, I know that the trolleybus scheme, quite a lot of the failing of it was having wires across the road. If we'd have been building that now, batteries would have come to a point where we wouldn't have needed the wires across the road, and we could have been delivering it. And that's the irony of where we've got to. We could have delivered a trolleybus scheme now that wouldn't have needed those wires across the road, that would have just been there running. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But what this looks at, as far as I understand, is different corridors that could carry a certain number of people and how many they need to carry, and then asks what vehicle would suit that, which is a better way, I think, of doing it round a better way. I want to add around the Leeds Bradford line. I think that's a really good one, because I've been looking at that, and apparently 70% of people still drive that journey between the two city centres. And with that train connection that's already there that goes straight past my house, which is nice, and that gets you there in 12 minutes, and a bus that comes every 7 minutes, it's a bit ridiculous that 70% of people are still driving that. So I guess is that what factors into those numbers of which routes come first? I guess the amount of people that are trying to move there but can't in a sustainable manner, is that how that's kind of calculated?
Yeah, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in terms of transport modelling and understanding the numbers that feed into the business case. I've got another head of service that I work closely that is the person in that regard. So I can try and answer your question in probably the simplest way based on my understanding. But yeah, it very much plays into it. So it's about the numbers of people that are trying to what's the evidence showing us in terms of the number of journeys that people are making, and where their journeys originating from, and where do those people aim to get to? And we clearly need to deliver the transport solution that enables people to make those journeys. So without the evidence in front of us in terms of the numbers, then we can't understand that. So that's where the transport model comes into play, to understand what journeys people are making. And if you're right, if it's 70% of people that are travelling between Leeds and Bradford are choosing to jump in their car to take that journey, then clearly that's a lot of customers that we could potentially tap into if we deliver an effective transport solution through mass transit that's easy for people to use, that it's frequent, that it's clean, it's sustainable, and that people want to use it. So those numbers it is a super important element. So I've not answered your question, but that's my view on how the numbers play into it, and I can seek to get you a more detailed view from my colleague if you're interested, and share afterwards.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it's just going back on some of those other questions people have had. I mean, it might be just that we need more of an understanding of how those corridors came about in the first place. And I think that's the difficult bit, as far as I understand it, that you laid out. It's what journeys can you take someone from and to? There are lots of journeys people make, but the fixed ones that you make that are between 2 points end up being those key between those key destinations, like Leeds to Bradford city centres. St James Infirmary will be another one. A lot of people are travelling to there. The journeys that are harder, I guess, are the ones that the bus network tries to do, which is somebody going to the shops in Horsforth or similar from their house, which is a much more difficult journey, and you wouldn't expect necessarily a mass transit answer for that.
Yeah, and I think that's where the integration really plays its part in terms of the ability for people to move between transport modes as well, and a bus system that's not trying to replicate mass transit in the same way that mass transit's not trying to replicate a heavy rail system.
Thank you for that, Stacey. So I don't see anybody new coming in. I have hands up on screen from Councillors Foster and Tudor. So assuming they are new points you want to make, can you make them briefly, please? I'll bring Councillor Foster in first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Completely different. It's just to do with connectivity. And that it's just been touched on. We've got one final destination that seems to be already plugged in, which is the White Rose Centre. And that's an area close to me. I've actually been down, Wycliffe, you're building a station, a rail station at the White Rose Centre as well. Unfortunately, the bus station and the rail station aren't actually connected properly. So I was curious to know whether the mass transit, when it goes to the White Rose, is it going to the rail station or the bus station, or will it go to both? And then there's an added complication to that, because I know when I inquired about the rail station, there's no car park being built. But you've obviously got a massive car park that belongs to the White Rose Centre. So when I spoke to the White Rose Centre and said, you know, what provisions are they making for parking for people using the rail station and now the mass transit, they said there's none. Absolutely, there's no wish for anyone using the rail station or mass transit to use their car parking. So you're creating a big transport hub there now with buses, mass transit and train station, but there's no parking.
So in terms of sorry, Chair.
I was just going to say, Stacey, you only feel that you need to come back on ones that relate to the work that you're directly doing.
Yeah, so in terms of the routing and whether it's going to the Leeds line's going to connect to the bus station or the train station, that's yet to be determined. We're still working through the feasibility work, and further details will be shared in terms of route option consultation in summer. In terms of creating a transport hub, I think I can't directly answer the question, but I think that's where the local transport plan will really make it clear, because the LTP will consider things such as park and ride facilities, for example, which will really I guess provide that capacity to enable people to park up and use a public transport network, whether it's mass transit or heavy rail or otherwise.
Thank you, Stacey. And finally, Councillor Tudor.
Thank you. Yeah, briefly. Well, it's a good job I'm not in charge, because I probably wouldn't do this. I'd want an absolute world-class bus service, a world-class regular train service, which we don't have either of those. And I'd see whether that would do the job. Nobody will listen to me, but that's what I think. And I think if we had hundreds of millions of pounds from the government, there's far better things we could do with it for the 850,000 people in Leeds. But as I say, it's a good job I'm not in charge.
Thank you, Councillor Tudor. Okay, so that looks like everybody who's commented or asked a question has done so, and I'm just going to bring this item to a close. Thank you, Stacey, for your comprehensive presentation. In terms of summing up, you agreed to come back with some information on ticketing following the question that Councillor Harrington asked, and Councillor Carlisle's identification of travel corridors. So that'd be good to get that at some point in the future. It would be good if you can keep us updated with information on consultation, because I'm sure we would want to share that widely. And then our next item for today is going to be on our forward plan. And one of the things we have identified that we'd like to look at is keeping an eye on this, and so it'd be good for you to come back, and maybe a good time would be after the consultation. I guess that's open to all of us to discuss, but it would be good to see you back, Stacey. So thank you very much, and thanks for your time today.
You're welcome, and we're happy to come back. Whether I'm the right person based on what information you might want to hear, then I'd be happy to have that discussion about what you might want to understand.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stacey. You are free. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Bye.
And that brings us on to our final item of the day, which is the forward plan, which you've all had a document from Rachel in your papers. Did you want to speak to that, Rachel?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So echoing what Councillor Dow's just said, you've all seen a forward plan of the topics intended to be discussed in the next municipal year. Obviously, given the entering the pre-election period, and obviously at the moment we don't have exact dates set, which is why dates are omitted from this original version. And it's just a couple of points really that in sort of changes from this year that we're looking at. So one of the things is to note that obviously we'll still have up to 3 open forum slots, as we've obviously been having over the last few years. One of the key changes is that in terms of what are known currently as the working groups, we're actually going to move to have them as almost neutral workshops instead, because that just gives opportunity rather than having to, a lot of the big areas of work, as you well know, obviously cross sector and cover different areas. So we find it in this manner, it'll be obviously a positive move so we can have obviously several discussions and we're not having to take them back to different working groups. 6 of the meetings will still include the directors' updates that we've been having, and obviously there's been areas of discussion just in this meeting about what we're wanting to bring forward in terms of Councillor Carlo referencing obviously bringing procurement potentially forward. We're going to obviously make sure that adaptation is still covered within those as well and within the work that's brought forward. So basically, it's, as you'll see there, we've split it down into the topics, and a lot of these topics that have been put forward for discussion have come from these meetings, have come from working group meetings, obviously linking into the work that we're doing. It's very much potential that these may actually see, more items will become apparent, as we well know, with all the work that's going on. And then there's also at the moment some of the current suggested items for the workshops as well that are listed further down. Again, these will very much become more extensive as the work goes on from this committee, feeding through to the other working groups. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'll open it up to questions. Has anybody got any questions or suggestions or anything they would like to see added? Councillor Carlisle is first.
Thank you, Chair. It was something that occurred to me previously, but then we've had the representation around pollinators as well. The update on nature and tree planting initiatives. I wonder whether we could have something around the maintenance side as well. I'm specifically thinking of relaxed mowing initiatives and an update on those and how they're being expanded, the kind of wildflower meadows side of it, and then probably the aspect around pesticides and any chemicals that are being used as well. I think it would be very useful to see data on those to get some of the details of what's being used from. Obviously, I can't remember what the fact is. There's a huge fact of how many million meters of verges, for instance, we maintain, which is a huge amount of green space. And I think I would like to look at how we're maintaining what's there as well as just the new additions.
Thank you. Anybody else got any suggestions? I can't see any of the people on the screen now. I don't know if anybody else can. Okay, so oh, thank you. You've come back. Nice to see you again. I as well, Rachel, I think that's a really good idea, but what from Councillor Carlisle, but one of the things that we also discussed in terms of working groups was to look at indoor air quality, which came out of, I think, the last SEAC meeting. So maybe we could put that on for the workshops. And then the other thing, following the finance working group that we had, was I know we've mentioned today asking directors to focus on procurement as one of the things they come back to us with next year. But one of the things that came out of that workshop was the possibility of having a procurement best practice workshop. I don't know whether that's something that we could look at, but I think the thing that the working group suggested was maybe bringing together different directorates and looking at, you know, who did a really good job of it and whether we could learn across the council on that. So I thought we could possibly add that as another suggestion. Any others? Any comments? Councillor Bowden.
Yeah, just a comment, just to say, I think the idea going forward, I think that the workshop should seem like they're going to be pretty effective. So yeah, sounds like I'm for all the suggestions.
Thank you. I think so. I think one of the things, as Rachel said, is that we got a bit kind of stuck really with having some of the ones that have been allocated where we had lots and lots of things and we didn't have time to deal with them, and others where we were kind of struggling to fill them. And I think this will give us a much better opportunity to deal with things across the board, but also to react in a timely manner. So when things come through that we can respond to a consultation, we're not saying, oh, hang on, we haven't got one of those workshops for another few weeks. We can say, yeah, let's put that in the next one. And the other thing we were going to do was make sure that all members get an invitation to all of the workshops, so that everybody gets invited to all of them and you can pick and choose which of the topics you'd like to come to. So I think that'll be helpful as well. Councillor Anderson.
Quick, one thing is, on a pedantic point, you've duplicated one of them at the bottom, updating the development of local energy. You've duplicated it. Going to do it twice. So good, we're going to do it twice. Anyway, the more serious point is, at WICA last week, they came forward with this green hub, energy hub approach at WICA last week. Is there anything that we should be putting in here so that we can look at how we can maximise our ability to operate that hub in Leeds, wherever it goes, whichever ward it's piloted out in? I'm not arguing that one place over another, but how can we maximise the benefits from this money that's going to be made available from WICA in the city?
Okay, thank you. I've added that to the list. Councillor Downs is now wanting to contribute.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't know if it's within our remit or whether it's been done before, but accessibility to NHS services. For example, my daughter, who is currently pregnant and lives within Leeds, was given a hospital appointment at 9 a.m. on Monday morning in Harrogate, and she doesn't drive. There's the carbon footprint involved in getting there. I just wonder if it's something that is within our remit to look at, because obviously it does add to the carbon footprint of Leeds.
Thank you. Anybody else got any suggestions from in the room or online? So can I give Rachel and Polly the opportunity, if they'd like to come in and comment on any of those suggestions people have made?
No, I think they all seem like good suggestions. But the last one from Councillor Downs might be more tricky in terms of how we get the data and information. I'm happy to ask the question, but obviously if we can't get hold of the data, it'll be quite hard for us to look at that. But we can certainly ask sort of the NHS sort of policies and what they're doing through the anchor groups and see. But that's the only one. I just don't know what data is available to help us do that, and also what influence we can have over that. But I'm happy to pursue that.
Thank you. Any comments, Rachel, that you'd like to add?
No, nothing from me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. So that's our forward plan etched out. It'll have more detail on it in terms of what and where and when. No, it's got the what. It'll be the where and when that'll come to us as it gets shaped into a document. So That brings our meeting to a close. We don't yet have a time and date for the next one, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for all your contributions over the last cycle of CX, and look forward to seeing you in the new municipal year. Thank you.